The SPL Draft League is currently at the halfway point in its regular season. I'm having a lot of fun watching. Of course, I did power rankings before the season started. That's what's on screen right now, the exact rankings that I made back then. And I always wanted to revisit them at some point, maybe give an update at some point. I was never doing it every week, I don't think, but I thought about every 2 weeks, and then that didn't work out either. But now that we're halfway through the season, at least I want to do it now, for sure. I am going to have to move a little bit quickly here. I've left this very late. I was sick last weekend, so I kind of got a late start watching week 4, and I am in a couple hours going out of town for this weekend. But even so, I do have some new power rankings, and we'll try to go through them quickly. I am basically up to date on the league. I've watched every possible set from at least one perspective through week 4, and I've gone through the fan doc to get some hasty screenshots that hopefully you'll excuse to use in this video. So I have all of the information from there available, and I definitely am feeling the draft league hype. It feels like a good time to be engaged with draft leagues right now, between watching this one with a number of my favorite players from different aspects of the competitive PokeTuber space coming together to play VGC, which is the only format that I play any significant amount now, to, of course, participating in draft leagues myself. I am, right now, as I record this, in the middle of the Season 8 draft for the PDL. I'm just waiting right now for my 7th round pick to come up. It should soon. So that draft is going to be hitting the channel probably fairly soon as well. And that's going to be a fun season for sure. But we're here right now to talk about the SPL, and these again are the rankings that I made before the season started. And as it tends to go with well, they're not really predictions, right? They're sort of predictions. But as it tends to go with this kind of exercise, I think it's safe to say that I got some things very right, and I got some things very wrong. And there are a couple of teams in particular that I think we'll find have moved quite a bit in the updated rankings. But let's just jump right in, because again, I don't really have time to goof around right now, talking forever. And let's see what I've come up with in this update. Actually, I do want to account for one other thing, which is going in making the preseason rankings. As I said at the time, I tried to only account for the quality of the draft and not the quality of the play. And the reason was I had varying information on the quality of the different players, and for some of them I had no information at all, right? Like some of these coaches were people I had never watched play anything before. And so that didn't seem like a fair comparison to try to make with such disparate information. This week, or in this update, of course, I can account for how they've been playing, and I probably will at some points. But let's jump in. First, as always, although I've been impressed with everyone this season, there does have to be someone in last place. And despite them having a win on the board now, the last place team has not changed. I do still have the Detroit Steel Wings ranked number 20. It is good to see them get a win, and I definitely think that they could get some more as the season goes on, although looking at the rest of the schedule, it certainly doesn't look like an easy one. But this team still just feels a little bit disjointed to me compared to the others. So there's a fairly credible Trick Room mode with like Gothitelle, Hariyama. I actually think getting Greedent set up with like Gothitelle and Electabuzz support could really surprise an opponent some week. I would not at all be surprised to see Greedent grab a win. But I just don't see... I guess the best way to put it is that something that I look for in a draft league right now, and this is a lesson I learned back in Season 4 of the PDL, which was a really rough season for me and is available to watch on the channel if you want to really see me go through it, is that in a VGC draft, it's helpful to have sort of a broken combination of Pokemon that you can fall back on week after week, which means opponents have to take it seriously in prep. And it also just gives you a reliable mode if you're having difficulty preparing yourself, right? And then you can also build out other modes around it to make your team more dynamic and hard to play against. And so with this team, I see some good Pokemon for sure. Like, coaches in the SPL keep saying that Fluttermane is the best Pokemon in the draft. I'm not necessarily sure I agree with that, but it is a very good one. Latios is strong. Gyarados is very strong and bulky and can play a number of different roles. Gothitelle can be hard to deal with. But what I'm not seeing on this team is that sort of bread and butter duo or trio, that simple basic mode that immediately every opponent has to prepare for and that might just run them over anyway. I just don't see that sort of explosive star power on this team And that's why it is still last for me. Like, Torterra can be an interesting Pokemon, but it's not necessarily the best, and there's not necessarily one mode that maximizes it week in, week out. Same goes for Blaziken. Gyarados is a solid Pokemon, but it just doesn't have that star power. I'm not going to make another attempt at this rant, so hopefully I'm making sense here. I see a lot of good Pokemon here. I just don't see any synergies here that to me really put this team over the top. But I absolutely would not be surprised to see them grab another win or two. Although, again, it is going to be a tough schedule the rest of the way. But Pokemon like Gothitelle and Fluttermane can definitely be hard for opponents to deal with. At number 19, I now have the Toronto Maple Mews, one of two teams in the league without a win yet. So as much as I do still like this team a good amount on paper, there kind of was only so high that I could go with it. And watching this team, and of course, I did identify this team as one of the ones that I was rooting for going into this season, purely because it has Toronto in the name and this Leafs-inspired logo here. So Sierra Dawn is one of the first coaches I watch each week when she uploads. But watching this team, it's felt like it's relied very heavily on the Corviknight so far. Like, Corviknight has been a super interesting pick, and it's kept Sierra in a lot of games after the other Pokemon went down. But I'm not sure that the rest of the team has necessarily been measuring up. I think we've kind of seen the limitations of Regieleki as a Pokemon that's very kind of strong and broken in a particular role, but not super flexible and has some exploitable weaknesses. You can kind of say the same about Roaring Moon. You can kind of say the same about Wellspring Mask Ogerpon in a very different way. Obviously, it plays very differently from Roaring Moon or Regieleki, but again, it's not the most versatile Pokemon, and it definitely has some obvious ways that opponents can attack it. And Pokemon like Donphan and Midnight Lycanroc, meanwhile, have not really been doing anything of note that I can recall. And they're just not especially good Pokemon, if we're being honest. So it has largely kind of felt like the Corviknight show so far watching this team. And that might be something that she can kind of steer into in the rest of the season. There are some ways that she can sort of build a mode around the Corviknight and set that up and try to get it going. But even so, Corviknight can only do so much. I do think this team definitely has some real potential. There's a lot of explosive offense potential with like Chi-Yu and Regieleki, maybe supported by Ogerpon, by Roaring Moon. You could do something with the pairing of Indeedee and Gallade. And I would still love to see the Darkspawn put in work some week. So, I mean, I don't think she's going to finish the season without a single win. I mean, again, it's a tough schedule the rest of the way, but I'm going to call it now. She doesn't go 0-8, but yeah, the weaknesses of this team have definitely been exposed so far this season. At number 18, I now have the Liyue Harbor Glazed Lilligants. I know all these names are cut off. Again, I don't have time to redo anything. This is a team with a lot of good Pokemon, but again, I sort of don't see that broken bread and butter mode that really puts the team over the top. Like, maybe you could do Aurora Veil, Calm Mind, Raging Bolt, or set the Raging Bolt up some other way. There is a decent Trick Room potential with the duo of Trevenant and Conkeldurr, maybe supported by Tinkaton. There's the Snow, or Stantler also can set Trick Room. There's the Snow duo of Alolan Ninetales and Glaceon, but I feel like this team is largely trying to get by on being kind of a good stuffs team, with Pokemon like Raging Bolt and Garchomp and Volcanion just being very strong, but they are sort of getting overwhelmed by opponents that have clearer synergies to fall back on. And that's kind of reflected in the win-loss record so far. But again, I mean, you can probably tell by now, if you're watching this for the first time, even how hard it can be to rank these teams against each other, because every team has a lot of good Pokemon, and there's a lot that solid prep or a creative game plan can do to put any of these teams over the top in a given week. I definitely don't think this team is bad, but I'm just not seeing in the results or on paper, on the roster page so far, something that puts it ahead of most of the rest of the league. Number 17, the Vancouver Vaporeons, actually one of the few teams to not move in this update, even as some teams have moved around them. The same 1-3 record as the Glazed Lilligants, and I did sort of weigh those two against each other for a while when I was doing the update. But so my main concern about this team preseason was that I thought it seemed potentially too dependent on Tornadus. Like, there are a lot of very strong Pokemon here again. Sylveon is bulky and hits very hard, but it has a very awkward speed tier. Baxcalibur is super strong, but its speed tier is not that remarkable. Landorus is an awesome Pokemon, but especially so if you get the rain set up for those Sandsear storms to hit. And again, Tornadus is the Pokemon that you're relying on for that. Hisuian Arcanine likes the Tailwind support. Jotonian Typhlosion really just relies on hitting things quickly with Eruption, and Tailwind support from Tornadus can help it a lot with that. So it felt like, to me, preseason, like there was a lot of pressure on the Tornadus to support the rest of its teammates. And I'm not sure that take was wrong now. I think it might be kind of bearing out, but at the same time, Pokemon like Sylveon, Baxcalibur, and Landorus are just so powerful that this is kind of one of the best versions of that sort of good stuff's building approach that I've, let's be honest, not been very high on in this video, where you just put a number of strong Pokemon together. A lot of the coaches that are sort of lower on these rankings have kind of built the rosters out that way, but I think this team is one of the best at it because Sylveon just hits so hard with such a valuable offensive type. Baxcalibur hits so hard. Landorus hits so hard. You have to watch out for Quaquaval potentially getting going with like Aqua Step and Moxie. She's got a solid Fire, Water, Grass core. The Skiploom was a lot of fun to watch in Week 4 against James Beck, even though it didn't win in the end. It certainly put in a lot of work. I think Hisuian Sneasel could put in a lot of work some weeks. So I feel like for a few of these teams so far at the lower end of the rankings, I've been saying there are a lot of good Pokemon here, but I don't necessarily see the super broken mode. For this one, I kind of do. I'm not completely convinced by it because I think it relies pretty heavily on the Tornadus. But even if you just reduce this to a good stuffs team with a bunch of Pokemon that are strong pushed together, I think the synergies and the raw power of the Pokemon are definitely better on this team than some of the others. And again, I could say this for every team, but we could definitely see some more wins the rest of the season. I think anyone can beat anyone in this league if they get their prep right. But we are seeing that 1-3 record so far. Number 16, Parasect Saint-Germain. Obviously, this is the hardest one to rank because the original coach dropped out after Week 3, and the replacement coach is someone I'm not familiar with at all. I've only watched them play one set, and it was against someone we'll talk about later. And this roster page is definitely not up to date. I don't have time to go digging up the accurate roster, but Pokemon like Serperior and Espathra I know are not here anymore. The core of Amoonguss and Incineroar is still here, so that's still a very strong defensive backbone for this team to fall back on. I think they still have Primarina, which is powerful. I don't know. They got a lot of strong Pokemon. Iron Valiant still is one of the most versatile Pokemon in the draft, being extremely fast with good offensive stats on both sides and a strong support move pool. This is a hard one for me to talk about right now because I don't have in my head all of the changes that they've made to the roster. But let's just say I didn't place it very high because it has no wins and there's only half the season left to go. I mean, I think they'd have to win every week potentially to make playoffs now. They might be able to make playoffs at 3 and 5. But yeah, this coach is largely an unknown to me. So I felt like I couldn't put this team very high, but with Pokemon like Incineroar and Amoonguss supporting strong offensive pieces around them, there was only so low I was willing to go as well. And this is a little bit down from where I originally placed the Miami Dawn fans. Number 15, the Shoutcasting Sylveons, dropping, I think, just one spot with a 1-3 record, although, let's be honest, they really got cheesed in Week 4 by the Baton Rouge Butterfrees. I mean, it's totally fair game what happened. I mean, the minimized strats are completely on the level in VGC, and you just have to deal with that kind of thing if someone brings it. And I certainly have been known once in a while to just slap a Bright Powder onto a Pokemon in draft because I couldn't think of a better item for it. Even so, a loss is a loss. This team is 1-3, and I do still somewhat believe, probably about the same amount as I did preseason, in the sort of bulky setup modes that this team has available to it, potentially setting up a Volcarona or Hisuian Goodra supported by things like Screen's Klefki, Follow Me Ogerpon, Jungle Healing Zarude, Palmet with the Revival Blessing option. A lot of what I like about this team I still like now, but at the same time, the limitation that I thought I saw to it, which was that it seemed very dependent on that kind of bulky setup mode, is still what I see now as well. Unless I'm forgetting something, I don't recall the details of every week, but I think Necro has largely been trying to set up the Volcarona or the Suicune week by week, and the results have, again, Week 4 was kind of an odd one. Let's say the results have been mixed, but the win-loss record is still in the negative right now. And if this team wants to break out of that mold and play a different way, It's not impossible because you can run offensive Ogre Pawn. Miss Magius can be a hard hitting mix up some weeks, switch up. I mean, with a choice spec set or something. There is the Slitherwing available, but yeah, this team I think is fairly narrow and obvious in terms of what ways it wants to play, and it's good enough at playing that way that I'm not putting it all the way down near the bottom of the rankings, but I think that is still a weakness. Number 14, the Philadelphia Stunkies at 3-1. I could have moved this team higher than I did, perhaps, but again, it's really hard when everybody has such good teams. But certainly this is up, I think, 5 spots from where I had it in my original rankings, and it's fair to say that this is one of the ones that make me look a little bit silly, as they do now have that 3-1 record when I had them like second last in my preseason rankings. I think that player diff is a real factor there. I mean, I don't know Shuckle King's level of VGC experience. I guess they were classified as a non-VGC coach if they were paired against Sierra in week 1. But I've been really impressed with some of the sets each week. This is one of those coaches who I think must be prepping very hard because they seem to find just the right text. The Stellar Ursaluna, the Stellar Urshifu against Necro in week 2 in particular was really something. And so, they're putting in the work and getting the results. And I definitely thought about ranking this team higher in the update than I've done. A couple of reasons why I have not gone higher. Number one, I'm not 100% certain because I couldn't find hard confirmation, but I don't believe that this week 3 set against Joe UX9 actually was played. Certainly I can't see it on YouTube. I think probably Joe forfeited that one, and that's why it scored as a win for Shuckle King. So I'm not really giving it any weight to these rankings. I'm thinking of this more as a 2-1 team instead of a 3-1 team. If I'm mistaken and it actually was played, that's my bad, but that's my best understanding right now of what happened. But otherwise, I mean, a lot of the weaknesses that I thought I saw in this draft, I still kind of think I see now. Talonflame and Rapid Striker Shifu is a super powerful duo, and just the kind of broken threat that a lot of opponents have to prepare for, with Talonflame being one of the best speed control Pokemon, and Rapid Striker Shifu just being one of the best at, just going in and attacking and breaking through things, being hard to stop with the likes of Protect and bulky boosting because it always crits and it has that Unseen Fist. So that's sort of an early example for this list of the kind of broken mode that you can fall back on that opponents always have to take seriously. And then you also have the Landorus, you have the Sinistra, able to redirect, able to give you a different kind of speed control with Trick Room, able to heal bulkier Pokemon like Landorus and Zapdos. Zapdos giving them some special offense, giving them some complementary typing to the likes of Urshifu and Sinistra. All of that's very good, and I like the Riolu a lot as possible coaching bot for Urshifu, Landorus as well. There is a lot of power on this team, and again, Shuckle King has done really well so far at finding the right sets to make the most of these Pokemon week after week. That said, I'm still not the biggest believer in Pokemon like Orthworm, Colossal, and Frostmoth in this format, and I'm really not necessarily sure what some of them bring to the table. So maybe I'm a little bit low still in the Philadelphia Stunkies, but I have only gone up to number 14 with this team. At number 13, I have the Brooklyn Bengals, sitting on a 1-3 record right now. Honestly, maybe I could go a little bit lower with this one so far based on the results, but again, I just kind of believe in the cheese with this team. I mean, I know the Pecharunt tech was really not hitting against Joe UX9 in week 4, just not getting those poisons. I don't actually know what the poison chance is on Malignant Chain, but it was definitely not going the way that Moxie Boosted wanted that week. But being able to get bulky and powerful threats like Kingambit and Komodo going on this team, having the Arcanine to give them Intimidate support, and a fair bit of versatility in its own sets, even able to play an offensive game, healing from Comfey, Snow from Obama Snow, possible Aurora Veil on Iron Bundle, or Encore support, or even setting Electric Drain from that Alolan Raichu like I've talked about before. And then all of that complemented by an actual little cute follow me Pokemon now in the Sentret. I guess I missed I must not have watched the video where it happened, but I guess I see the Cleffa is gone and there is now a Sentret, which does have follow me. There still are a number of creative modes that this team can run that I really do believe have a lot of potential. And so at 1 and 3, maybe the Bengals could be ranked lower, but I think the Bengals definitely have a shot to really surprise some people with some creative techs or just bulky modes like Kamo, Comfey stuff that are hard to break in the rest of the season. At number 12, the Miami Palafins. This is a team that I think I had a little bit high in the preseason rankings, even when it was just purely on the draft. I saw a number of solid Pokemon here. Tyranitar Excadrill, that's so good. You get the sand rush. Then you have some fast, hard-hitting coverage Pokemon like the Hearthflame Mask Ogerpon and the Keldeo. Makes a lot of sense, right? Gardevoir also complementing nicely, being immune to a partner's Earthquake with the telepathy and having the Fairy typing to go with Excadrill Steel typing. You finish the Fairy Dragon Steel Core with Salamence, which can run its own Intimidate. It can hit very hard on the physical or special side. 2 good Tailwind setters in Kilowattrel and Volbeat. Like, there's a lot that's really fundamentally sound about this team, but I'm not sure... Honestly, I'm not sure that it had quite the same power as some of the others. So I saw that sort of fundamental strength and really solid core of Pokemon with good stats, good moves, good abilities, able to hit hard, solid complementary coverage. And I definitely think this is a team that is better than its 1 and 3 record. But yeah, maybe it is missing that little something that puts it over the top. And I even kind of started to think so after the preseason rankings went up on the channel. So I am dropping it to number 12 right now. The 1 and 3 record is also a factor there. And so is the fact that while Volbeat is... I do somewhat believe in Volbeat as a priority Tailwind setter. It has kind of been an exploitable weakness for opponents in some weeks when it, apart from setting the Tailwind, kind of just sits on the field and doesn't accomplish a whole lot. But... maybe this team will turn things around later in the season and make me look silly for questioning it in the middle here. That certainly seems like a possibility as the season goes on. Number 11 is now the Montreal Ice Qs. This is, first of all, this roster is definitely not up to date. I know Pokemon like Skeleturge and I think Sudowoodo are not here anymore. I did watch Amol's video in week 4, and so I have heard what Pokemon are gone and what are added. I think Espathra is now on this team, but I don't remember all of the details. This one is a weird one for me to rank because the main reason that I put it sort of solidly middle of the pack in the first place was that I thought Hoopa as a Psy-Spam attacker looked terrifying and that it might just rip through some opposing teams. And I would say in reality, Hoopa has not quite measured up to what I thought it could do. In particular in week 1, it has bounced back some in other weeks, and there was one week especially, week 1, it didn't really impress me. There was one week where it really did. I think it might have been week 2. But even so, Hoopa has not quite been everything that I thought it might be. But that said, Amol has made great use of Pokemon like Sandy Shocks, Okidogi, and Blastoise most recently that I was kind of iffy on and made them look like amazing complementary pieces to that Hoopa. So this is a team where the Pokemon that I thought were best have not quite done everything that I thought they might, but the Pokemon that I wasn't quite so sure about have put in a ton of work. And I think it rounds out to a solid 3-1 record, but I think also, yeah, this is definitely a team to take seriously as a threat the rest of the way. And if I'm remembering correctly, and Espathra has been added to the team, that could play very nicely with that Hoopa Psy-Spam mode and maybe even be the thing that puts it over the top. Espathra, of course, able to boost up with Speed Boost, use Lumina Crash to lower opponent's special defense, which could open some holes for Hoopa. And of course, you can also play the Espathra Sandy Shocks game from like Reg B VGC, where Sandy Shocks sets up Gravity and Espathra clicks Hypnosis. Sandy Shocks speed boosted with the Booster Energy, and Espathra, again, boosting itself with the Speed Boost. Throw in Okidogi, throw in the threat of Shell Smash Blastoise just popping off any given week like we saw in week 4. And yeah, this is a team with a lot of threats that they're hard for opponents to contain, especially when everybody is going to be prepping hard for the Hoopa Psy-Spam stuff, and that can create openings for some of the other Pokemon to go crazy. That's the kind of thing that I think some of the teams at the lower end of the rankings are missing, but this is a good demonstration here of what that can look like. But that said, this is the last team of the bottom half of the league, and so now we go into the top half. And at number 10, I do have the Melbourne Rotoms. Now, it looks like week 4 has not yet been played for this team against the Toronto Maple Mews, so that 2-1 record, as far as I know, is the record. And, a tough loss to Pokemon in week 1 and then back-to-back wins looks very solid. I might be a little bit low on this team right now, and of course Aaron Zheng is a very strong player. This is not very far from where I had this team in my preseason rankings. It is down a little bit. Part of that could be explained by people moving up, but also the more... I kind of have mixed feelings about my original take on this team the more I think about it. Like, going in, I was kind of like, okay, I see the strong Trick Room stuff. Cresselia and Ursaluna is a crazy Trick Room duo. Throw in the Therian and Enamorus, and you're hitting hard on both sides of the spectrum with one of the best Trick Room setters, some of the best Trick Room attackers. And then you have some solid supports down here with the Vivillon and the to intimidate users and Wo-Chien. The Grimmsnarl can set up screens and parting shots for everything. And then, okay, the Spectrier gives you a fast offensive mode. I wasn't completely believing in the Spectrier. I believe more in the Spectrier now, actually, than I did then, as we've seen it put in work in multiple weeks, maybe all of them so far. That said, the team feels a little bit inflexible to me, and that's the reason that I've never been able to quite put it up in like the top 8 or top 5 or so. Actually, I might have had it 8th. I think I had it 9th originally. But you know what I mean. It's at the low end of the top half because it does feel a little bit inflexible to me. It feels like it wants to either get that Spectre going as a fast special attacker or play that Trick Room mode with the Cresselia, Ursaluna, and Enamorus. And it is very good at playing in those two ways. I just don't see much it can do in terms of mix-ups, right? Like, if you see Cresselia in a given week, you probably know what it's going to do. Cresselia actually might be one of the more versatile Pokemon on this team. You definitely know what Ursaluna wants to do. You definitely know what Enamorus, Spectrier. You have a pretty good idea about what Vivillon wants to do, and Wo-Chien. So there's just... This team is just missing a little bit of that unpredictability, and it's really good at a couple of things. But if an opponent can prepare for those couple of things, then... I mean, the team is good enough that it might be able to just power through anyway, but that is a little bit of a limitation, I think, on its ceiling. At number 9, the Baton Rouge Butterfrees, still my personal favorite roster in this league and one that I enjoy watching every week. But I am dropping them one spot because the results have been a little bit shaky so far. Obviously, there is a 3-1 record here, but that is with the minimize win against Necro, which again is a totally valid way to win, but obviously high variance and multiple things had to go right for that to work out. I really enjoy the Hisui and Zoroark games. I'm not sure I'm the biggest believer in how much it's actually contributed concretely in this team's sets so far. I enjoy the trickery on paper. Sometimes I see it do some damage early in a game, and it's not really clear to me why that damage is valuable, and the game kind of gets away from that's a +1 later on as they're just not able to convert. Which is one thing that's tricky about using Hisui and Zoroark. I'm not sure that I've seen as many creative and interesting uses of the Jirachi as I was hoping for, but the Jirachi definitely has a lot of potential going forward later this season. And this is still, again, you want that kind of explosive potential on a team to just break a game wide open. This is still a team that, if the opponent doesn't prepare right, can set Tailwind and just blast their Pokemon away with Regidrago. Or Trick Room with the Chandelure, and Chandelure and Regidrago go crazy in the Trick Room. Terrakion has been putting in a ton of work, and every opponent has to cover for that, and also the Regidrago and the Chandelure and the Weavile. There's just so much offense, much of it fast, but they can also play slow if they want. So many strong Pokemon that are capable of breaking the game wide open, and they're varied in how they do that, varied enough in how they do that it's hard to prepare for all of them. And then you throw the Zoroark on top, and your game plan might just get turned on its head. So I'm not sure that we've seen the best version so far of how this team can play, but with a 3-1 record, it's still largely working. I mean, this team is in the top half of the rankings for a reason, and I think if they sort of figure some things out a little bit more as the season goes on, this team is definitely still a threat to win the championship. And either way, it's still a personal favorite to watch every week. Number 8 now goes to the Oklahoma City Thunderbolts. This team has had a little bit of a rough start to the season, and I might be overreacting a little bit to that. But to be honest, I put this team at number 5 in my original rankings based on the draft. I think I might have been a little bit Reg H-brained when I did that. Obviously, this team does have some Paradox Pokemon and a Legendary, and we've seen those Pokemon put in work over the course of the season, but I think to some extent, I saw Blood Moon, Ursaluna, Farigiraf, Murkrow, Hisuian, Typhlosion, and my brain was like, yeah, that's VGC. Those are good, because I was very used to Reg H still at the time. This team, I mean, it does have some limitations, right? It's one of 2 Sun teams in the draft, and obviously we can see now that I've put the other one higher than this one. It is a little bit reliant for any kind of Tailwind or Sun mode. It is kind of dependent on the Murkrow in sort of the same way that I criticized the Vaporeons for being dependent on the Tornadus, and Murkrow is not quite as strong as Tornadus, but this team just has so many Pokemon that can take advantage of that Sun mode if they do get it going, especially the Great Tusk and the Typhlosion, but we've also seen the Brute Bonnet put in a lot of work. And then Farigiraf still is a very strong Trick Room setter. There's a lot of power there with the Blood Moon, Ursaluna, and the Great Tusk, though they are both ground types and they do have some shared exploitable weaknesses. The Glastrier I'm a little bit less of a believer in, but we did see it put in a lot of work in Week 3. So there's still a lot that I like about this team, but it has admittedly not had the smoothest start so far to the season, and I did drop it a few spots to account for that. And I feel like we still haven't seen the most. I feel like there's still a lot we haven't seen about what the Smeargle can do for this team to support those attackers that are very powerful but have some weaknesses. I mean, Smeargle has a lot of different ways that it can help them open holes, and it'll be an interesting Pokemon to watch as the season goes on. But I could see this team climbing back up, but so far, yeah, I think number 8 is pretty reasonable. And at number 7, we do have the other Sun team, the Toronto Tyrants. This team is just so solid. It's been a lot of fun to watch week after week. I will say, in terms of sort of a limitation to this team, just that Nexus's inexperience at VGC formats has been coming out sometimes here and there. And that is one reason that I can't put this team higher in the rankings. But even so, with that 2-2 record, there are a couple of impressive wins in there. I mean, the one against the Immunity Idols in Week 4 really felt like a statement win to me. And this team is just so strong. Torkoal, Hisui, and Lilligant is a tried-and-true duo. You have the Sunroom stuff with the Torkoal and the Porygon 2. Charizard can just blast things away in the sun. So can Walking Wake. And then there are solid, bulky Pokemon like Iron Hands and Clefable that can really make the difference in matchups where the opponent might be prepared to stop some of those other Pokemon, right? Like, I don't know that Nexus has necessarily made the best use of Walking Wake every week. It's kind of a tricky Pokemon to position well if you're not used to playing this kind of format. I've never yet made very good use of Walking Wake when I've tried it in VGC, but even if the Walking Wake doesn't work out, the opponent then has to break the Iron Hands or the Clefable. Maybe the Iron Hands is playing in Trick Room. There's just a lot that's so solid about this team, and I was really impressed with the win, again, over the Immunity Idols in Week 4. So, yeah, up to number 7, I think, is fair for the Tyrants. And this, of course, is another one that I watch relatively early every week because it has Toronto in its name, and it's been a lot of fun to watch Nexus figure this format out. Number 6 now is the Golden State Gallades. I thought about keeping this team higher, but I did end up dropping them a couple of spots. The 2-2 record, of course, is a factor in doing that, and I think with Owen, kind of like with Nexus, we have at some point seen the inexperience with VGC formats coming out a little bit, which is something that might well be smoothed out over the rest of the season. But in Week 4, not accounting for the sort of Ruin drop into an ally on the Dragonite calcs was one thing that kind of stood out, and I know got a lot of attention in the comments under that video. But I don't know, I'm maybe a little bit cooler on this roster than I was preseason. Not a lot. I mean, this roster, you want a broken mode that opponents have to prepare for every week. Fast physical offense with priority spam is a pretty solid one, right? So Chien-Pao and Dragonite is a tried and true duo in VGC for a reason. And then you have the Teal Mask Ogerpon with the Defiant, so they can't just intimidate your Pokemon with the speed boost when it terastallizes. You have the Azumarill with the huge power boosted Aqua Jet, maybe even set up a Belly Drum if you want. All that supported by Magmar Redirection. That stuff's really strong. I was maybe hoping that Therian Thundurus and Delphox would pick up the slack on the special attacking side more than they have so far. And I still don't really know what Scrafty is okay. I still don't really know what Skarmory brings to this team much at all. But, I feel like I'm a tiny bit cooler on the roster just because it does have that one super broken mode that I think could go a long way in the rest of the season by itself. But looking over it now with a little bit of hindsight, I'm not necessarily sure what it does other than that. But you never know. A Pokemon like Delphox, if you position it just right, or Therian Thundurus could put in a lot of work each week, or even a creative Dragonite set or something. And again, that core of Chanpao, Dragonite, Azumarill, Ogerpon, Magmar is just so powerful that even if they just keep falling back on that every week, I mean, they could win out the rest of the regular season potentially and be in a solid position going into playoffs. So this is maybe a little bit of a speculative drop. There's a reason I had this team top 4 in my preseason rankings, and I was not going to drop it very far now, but yeah, there are definitely some things to smooth out the rest of the way, but there's no reason they can't do it. And now we come to number 5, and that's where I've put the LA Wakers. Up a whopping 13 spots, I think, from my preseason rankings. And I want to address a couple of things here. One, this is to an extent player diff. So PokeAim is a seasoned veteran player, not very experienced in VGC, but kind of known for being able to pick up a lot of different Pokemon formats. And do well in them, even with not necessarily a lot of experience. Just an extremely strong understanding of the game of Pokemon on a fundamental level that he's been carrying over to a lot of formats for a long time. But also, he clearly preps extremely hard week after week. Like he's talked about spending hours playing mocks, and he tends to bring very optimized sets that do exactly what he needs them to do to get him these wins. And we've seen solid in-game decision making too, right? Making really solid reads week after week that opponents aren't ready for, even veteran players like James Beck and Cybertron. So player diff is a factor in this move up from the preseason rankings where I was trying not to account for that. But I do also think that I made some mistakes in evaluating this draft. And funnily enough, I fell into exactly the trap that he openly said that he was setting for VGC players when he did his draft recap, which was he drafted multiple mythical Pokemon because VGC players aren't used to playing mythical Pokemon and are not necessarily going to be the most knowledgeable about what they do and how good they are. I think I fell into that very trap just as a third-party amateur analyst here. So the Manaphy, I should have known about the Manaphy because I watched the Bronx Beartix back in the day. I have a Bronx Beartix t-shirt somewhere that's definitely too small now. But even so, I was not ready to see it tanking hits and setting up with those tail glows. And just being a nightmare for opponents to try to remove as it breaks through their teams with those Hydro Pumps and whatnot. The Speed Deoxys is a Pokemon that I really kind of overlooked in the preseason, but has been putting in a ton of work. I thought, okay, it's very fast. It's valuable in singles formats, at least back when I played singles. It was one of the great hazard setters and hazard deniers and whatnot, but does that really carry over to VGC? And no, that playstyle doesn't, but Deoxys has been putting that speed stat to great work for him in doubles because it can either go supportive with screen stuff like we saw in week 4, which is great for enabling setup Manaphy or Annihilate or even Mudsdale, or another thing that he's done, right? It has just enough offense that if you build just the right set to take out a particular threat on the opponent's team, then it can remove whatever their answer is to some of your other threats. And so he's been making incredible work of that Deoxys so far. Doing incredible work with. The Deoxys has been great in his hands. He's been using that Pokemon in just the optimal way that I really didn't even see coming. And yeah, it supported the bulky Annihilate and Manaphy stuff nicely. Diancie hasn't really done anything so far, but maybe it will. Hydrapple is a Pokemon that I'm not very familiar with, even though it's been VGC legal for a while, but we've seen it put in work. And a lot of these picks, right, they're sort of... He made really solid value picks that just fit exactly what his team needed. So Sneasel, I knew Sneasel would be decent. I didn't know it would be putting in work every week like it's been doing. Furret, it's kind of just a follow-me bot, but that's really valuable on this team that's built around the Annihilate and Manaphy modes and sometimes getting the Assault Vest Hydrapple going or something. Poltergeist. Great value pick, does like one thing, but that thing is really helpful, again, to his game plans. So I know AIM seems to like to think of himself as an underdog, and I don't have him number 1 in these rankings, even though he's undefeated, but this draft was full of sleeper threats that were not necessarily the strongest Pokemon in a vacuum, but were perfectly calibrated to just what he wanted to do with this team. And again, I don't have this team at the very top because it is still a team where a lot has to go right week by week. Like, I feel like he's had a number of matchups already where if he hadn't prepped crazy hard and put in a ton of work into optimizing just the right sets, then the matchups could have gotten away from him, again, especially against these veteran VGC players. But he has been doing that. It's been paying off. He knows that this is what happens when you put Pokemon in the hands of a real master, right? He knows exactly what he wants to do with each of these Pokemon and how to pull it off. And I mean, when he gets to the playoffs, it only has to go wrong once and he's out. But it hasn't gone wrong yet, so I won't be surprised at all if he wins the championship. Number 4 now is the other undefeated team, the Mediterranean Mimikyu. Got to give some respect to a team that hasn't lost a single set yet. And this team has multiple strong modes, the Psy-Spam stuff with Meowstic and Iron Crown, the Regigigas stuff with the coughing. We've seen Yanmega game plans. We've seen Urshifu just be one of the most powerful Pokemon in the format. We've seen Entei be Entei. But, yeah, I'm not sure this team has all of the well-rounded, hard to prep for power of the top 3, and that's why I've not put it in the top 3, but I do still think that it has more in the way of broken modes that don't have to be optimized just right compared to the Wakers, and so of the 2 undefeated teams, I have placed it higher, but yeah, I mean, Meowstic and Iron Crown seems like they have some weaknesses. Regigigas stuff definitely has some weaknesses, but it's been working out just fine for this team so far, and I'm not going to ignore that in placing it in these rankings. Now, I'm getting short on time, but as you can tell, if you know the preseason rankings, there is no change to which teams are in the top 3, and I'll just tell you now, there's no change to the order either. The Jubilife Piplups are still number 3, even though they defeated the New York Yveltals in week 2. They did have, you know, it was a close one that could have gone either way, and we'll see what happens if there's a playoff rematch, and one thing I'll say is that I do think James has seemed a little bit underprepared in some weeks, which I realize is an intentional choice. He talked about it in his interview with PokeAim. He's only putting in an hour of prep or whatever it is, which is fair enough. That tends to be closer to what I do when I play a Draft League. But even though he won week 4 against the Vancouver Vaporeons, I did kind of come across like he'd slept on the Skiploom. And so his Pokemon ended up sleeping on it in battle, and I was a little surprised at how he played into it in game 1 of that set, though he did, of course, find the adjustments and power through in the end. And this team is very good at finding adjustments and powering through. Pokemon like Dondozo and Goldengo are hard to shut down in 2 games out of 3, and James has brought a lot of interesting tricks with the Fletchinder. The Meowscarada and Tauros could be valuable switch-ups in some weeks, keep opponents off balance. There's contrary stuff with the Enamorus. There's a lot that this team still can do, but yeah, as it stands now, the prep is not always all the way there, which, you know, is a valid choice, but that is the case sometimes. And in week 4, it kind of seemed like he was relying on the Goldengo to break through things. But so that's why I haven't moved this team any higher than number 3, but it is still just nightmarishly hard to deal with the Dondozo stuff and all these powerful pieces around it. And so I wasn't dropping it any spots either. The New York Yveltals are still at number 2. Again, I'm not taking the 2-2 records super seriously because as far as I know, this set probably didn't actually happen. But this team is still so well-rounded, so incredibly hard to prep for. It has that broken mode that I like to see in, you know, attack boosting, coaching, or Howl stuff with Sneasler, Rillaboom, Gouging Fire, even Howl, Raikou maybe. All supported by the Melodic because you can't just intimidate it for fear of setting off the competitive. It has special attacking options in Melodic and Galarian Moltres, which is bulky and can set itself up with a nasty plot. It has a really super strong Fire, Water, Grass core that's hard to break through. It has the Mimikyu setting up Trick Room potentially benefiting from a coaching or a Howl, hitting with those ghost attacks and being hard to remove with the Disguise. Fast electric type in the Raikou, which again can support some of its teammates in a valuable way. Registeel for a slow, bulky game plan. Yanma can speed boost. It can throw off Hypnosis. It can set Tailwind. Moltres can also set Tailwind. This team just does so many things so well. It's so solid across the board. A tough loss against the Piplups in week 2. I'm not going to overreact to because the Piplups also have an incredibly good roster with an incredibly good coach. But this still feels like one of the teams to beat for sure, and the only one above it is still the Immunity Idols. I was not familiar with this coach going into the season. My understanding is he's new to VGC formats, but it has not mattered much this season as this draft is just so powerful. It's been racking up wins anyway. Did lose to Nexus in week 4, but I don't think I'm going to overreact to that when this team is so powerful and has so many strong modes to throw at the opponent. Obviously, the rain stuff with Pelipper, Overquill, and Basket Legion, and Archaladon. You can set up Archaladon with Mousehold. You can do manual rain or speed control, or just throw off Wild Bolt Storms or something with the Thunderous. There's Trick Room stuff with the Weirder and Rhyperior. There's Beat Up into Virizion. We've seen the Berserker with Steely Spirit to boost our Chaladon's damage. Weather sometimes feels like a cheat code in a VGC draft. It kind of depends, because if other people are also drafting the same weather, then you end up kind of cannibalizing each other's teams. But when you're the only one building a dedicated rain team like this, there's so many strong Pokemon that people just leave to you because they're not as valuable to them. And we've seen it pay off super well with the immunity idols here. And so even though I think the coach is not very experienced in VGC formats, it has really not mattered much so far this season, as this team is just so powerful and is still, to me, the favorite, at least in terms of roster composition, to win the whole thing. Although teams like the Wakers and the Yveltals and the Piplups are definitely going to be hard to beat in the home stretch. So those are my mid-season ranking updates to the SPL Power Rankings. I might do something at the end of the regular season, but I'm not sure if that'll be worthwhile, because that will be season over for a number of coaches here. I don't know if it'll be worth sort of rehashing what happened with their teams, or if I'll want to. Maybe I'll do like a video where I shout out some plays that I liked, or some creative text from each coach. I don't know. I'm going to think about it over the rest of over the next 4 weeks. So feel free to leave a comment if you have any thoughts on how I can close this out. But I did want to do an update somewhere along the way, and that's it. Actually, I did make a summary. This is the rankings preseason again, and this is the new rankings with this midseason update. Again, the Los Angeles Wakers moving up from 18 to 5, but a number of other teams up and down along the way. And the teams at the very top holding steady, even though none of them are undefeated, still looking to me like they're the ones to beat. But 4 weeks left in the season, a lot can happen. I really think anyone can win any given week, and it's going to be a ton of fun to see what happens and how the playoff picture shakes out. I'll still be watching each week for sure. And like I said, there will be more Draft League content coming soon, because I will be bringing Season 8 of the PDL probably any day now, once the draft is over and I get a chance to record my summary. So, see you then. Happy drafting.